Good evening and welcome to All for United WFC with me, Matt Crane. Tonight we've got some big topics, some controversial topics coming up. I'm delighted to be joined tonight by John and Gareth. John, how are we doing?
Yeah, good, thank you, Matt. Busy day on the old Twitter.
Oh no, it's been chaos. Yeah, Gareth, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, been a mad evening with everything going on.
I know, one thing and another. If it's not work, it's social media and football, and if it's not that, it's something else. But we've all made it. We're all here. We've all survived. So before we sort of get into the show, I'm just going to jump straight into the breaking news that dropped literally about 5-10 minutes ago from TalkSport. Ed Woodward is resigning from Man United, according to them. I mean, at the minute, I think from what I could see, that was the only source. But I mean, they're not usually very wrong with things. They're not normally miles out. But yeah, so obviously he's resigning. Good news in terms of, United fans. I'm sure, there's been many sort of protests and criticisms of how he's done stuff. And I said to you, John, didn't I, backstage, it was weird because obviously he's resigned with ease over the backlash and this, yet everything else that has been, bad as well, is kind of always stayed. So I'll get both of your thoughts. I'll start with you, John, obviously, sort of thoughts on it. I mean, I'm assuming like me, you probably chuff with that because the whole thing over these last few days has been a bit of a shambles. But yeah, go on.
It has. But there's so many different ways you could look at this because one, why is he resigning? Obviously, I understand like the fact that like he's the chief executive, but it's obviously the Glazers who's agreed to this. So is it something that he's maybe done wrong behind the scenes and he knows he's either going to get sacked or something that way? Because as you said, Matt, of all the things that's happened over the last God knows how many years, he's always stood strong, hasn't he? He's always like been like right there with the Glazers. Now all of a sudden he's chose to resign, which is really something's obviously gone on behind the scenes, or maybe now for once he's not backing up the Glazers and he's doing this on his own accord, and he's just decided I don't want to be a part of this, or maybe he's thinking that the fans will turn on Woodward as well as the Glazers. There's so many things, but definitely a surprise. I definitely would have expected that. But yeah, I'll let Gareth speak, and then obviously we can talk about the Super League a little bit later.
Yeah. So I think there's call me cynical, but I'm seeing now as well. My mates just texted me to say that Agnelli has gone from Juve as well. This strikes me as owners trying to save face. As if the Glazers can get Woodward to go, then the fans will all be buzzing that Woodward has gone and they'll forget about this whole Super League mess, which we'll get onto later. So, yeah, I think that's probably why. I imagine that it was those two, Woodward and Agnelli, kind of really pushing this from the forefront. We saw that Liverpool, United, Real Madrid and Juve were the kind of four main clubs pushing this on. At the moment, there's no confirmed reports that United are pulling out. So, they'll just kind of do this and shift attention away, I think, for now, and then be like, let's give this to United fans to be happy with, and then they'll hopefully forget about us trying to destroy everything.
I agree with Gareth there, but I still don't think it's enough because for once, I don't think there's many fans in the last couple of days that's been blaming Woodward. It's all about the Glazers, So I do agree that maybe that it is some sort of ploy to try and win us back over and like ease it a little bit, but I don't think it'll work this time. If it was like a poor transfer window, yeah, absolutely, Woodward gone. But this is bigger, isn't it? It's the Glazers' names just on the Super League, and not so much Woodward. So to me, for once, I don't think this will suffer any blow for me, if I'm honest. And it's just come up on Sky News on screen. I can read it. European Super League, Ed Woodward has resigned or something. It's just come up on my screen. So yeah, he stepped down. So it has actually come up on Sky News as well, just as I'm talking to you guys.
No, interesting, because I've got BBC on, and BBC are now saying the end of 2021. What isn't clear is, did he mean this season, as in like 2020, 2021, or did it actually mean 2021, as in he's going to go partway through next season? Obviously, I'm sure we'll get more on that. obviously as the days or the hours got on. But it's interesting, like Gareth said, obviously he was talking about like Ed and maybe being a scapegoat for the Glazers. Now, there are only rumours, because obviously we'll get on to the two clubs that have confirmed that they are going to pull out. But there was rumours of something happening in terms of ourselves Friday. Again, unconfirmed and only rumours. However, it does make you think that, something must be going on behind the scenes for Ed to all of a sudden resign.
Yeah.
It's a little bit bizarre, and you would expect now the club to maybe confirm that they are pulling out, and obviously, like as mentioned, Ed's likely to have brokered it. He's probably played a massive role in this. But yeah, bit bizarre really. But I suppose people can't complain because people have wanted him gone for years. So it's one of them really. I suppose every cloud, but it's still an absolute shambles, to put it politely. The whole scenario.
Go on. Sorry, guys. Go on.
I was going to say, when I saw the kind of unconfirmed reports that United were going to pull out by Friday, that struck me as kind of, again, maybe being cynical, they're not going to pull out, and essentially by then the European Super League will have folded, and it means that Glazer kind of hasn't gone back on his word, because I just couldn't see either Henry or Glazer or Perez or Agnelli or whoever owns Juve from pulling out, given that they were the vice presidents, they were the presidents, they were the people that were leading on this. I just couldn't see them backing down and pulling out, and I thought that the league would fold and the whole idea would collapse before they would pull their own individual clubs out.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's obviously a lot harder for United to do it, because obviously they're a part of the board or the structure or whatever it is. But yeah, it's a bit like what Gav said earlier, just like saving face. And I don't know if the club owners thought it was going to be as big as what it's now led to. Rival fans actually getting together and marching together, and not just like different like fans of different clubs. I'm about rival fans like Liverpool and United and Man United City and Man United Leeds. It doesn't matter about who your rivals are at the moment. The rivals are the club owners, and it's absolutely massive. And when this first came out, I didn't really think it was going to happen, because it's such a big thing. But then all of a sudden it looked like it was all done and dusted with that 11 o'clock announcement later on in that night. But now it looks like maybe there are clubs backtracking, and that will lead us on to one of the next topics.
Yeah, I'm going to put the topic slightly further back, only slightly, because I do think obviously it's going to take us a while, and it wouldn't be fair on the FA Cup. So I'll start with the FA Cup for sort of a little roundup from the weekend. Obviously Chelsea with the Friday night, they got their 5-0 win against London City Lionesses. I think then Man City was Saturday, comfortable against Villa. I think that finished 8-0. Wins for Birmingham as well. They somehow ended up on the BBC over everybody else, and I really don't know how. I can only think because it was a derby that game got picked. Obviously, West Ham went through, Arsenal went through, Brighton just about scraped past Bristol. Obviously, we got our win. Everton beat Durham. What else we got? Huddersfield beat Derby County. Leicester beat Liverpool. Southampton was a good result. Away at Lewis. Southampton are third tier. I've always said too good for that league. Very good side. Got a good win, like I say, at Lewis. Sheffield United got 9 past Middlesbrough. Charlton Athletic are through. Tottenham Hotspur won 3-2 against Reading, and Blackburn put 5 past Wolves. So not a bad weekend. Some heavy scorelines. I just want to kind of, like I say, round that up. I'll come to your thoughts, both of you. Also, I'll go with you first, Gareth. Obviously, apart from the Man United result, was there anything there that kind of was, stuck out for you or surprised you, or, was it pretty much as you thought in terms of those results?
I think more or less as you thought. There wasn't many games where the two teams were particularly similar in quality. I think the 3 that kind of stand out were Spurs, Reading, Brighton and Bristol, and then Liverpool and Leicester. They were the kind of the 3 ties where you thought these could be a bit of a toss-up. But, it seems like a good round of cup football. I think, that's what I was going to mention, that Victor just mentioned there, that West Ham, when they're 8-0 up bringing on a keeper to play in midfield didn't sit. You sent me through the tweet, and I just thought this is madness. Like, this is the kind of thing that I do when I'm playing Football Manager and I want to lose the game. It just seemed completely ridiculous. So that didn't sit particularly well. But everything else, a good week of cup football, and there's some cracking ties up for the next round. I think our tie against Leicester is going to be a really good game, and genuinely, there's potential banana skin there. Obviously, you don't want to see 11-0 absolute maulings of other teams, but I think at this stage, it's to be expected when you get genuine, amateur teams going up against professional teams. It's bound to happen. But yeah, there's a good week of cup football, and I would imagine those you would expect to progress did maybe bar Spurs. Might have thought Reading would get that done, but everyone else, I think, pretty much as you expected. A good weekend for those with accumulators, probably.
It's interesting though, because you talk about maulings, and obviously, the thing to for me, Man City beating Villa, 2 WSL clubs. Okay, Villa are bottom, but again, I'd consider that a mauling. So it's not. On the whole, it was the lower league teams, like you say. But yeah, John, I'm going to come to you and sort of just briefly. I'm not going to jump too far, but just thoughts on obviously our tie. Like Gareth said, obviously, we've got Leicester newly promoted as of next season to the WSL. Going to be a different sort of proposition, isn't it, to Burnley?
Yeah, one I'm really looking forward to, because last time I watched Leicester, obviously we won them quite convincingly, didn't we? So obviously a different team now. I'm really looking forward to it. It will be tough. I think obviously we've got our win, so we've got a bit of a morale boost there, but we're not necessarily flying at the moment. If we won 3 or 4 on the trot, then I'd feel comfortable. But they are flying, aren't they? So they'll come into this game full of beans, and they will be expecting to get something out of that game. They're not just going to turn up just for the fun of it. They are probably hoping to keep it really tight to the back, and then hopefully nick a goal from us, which is definitely possible from a corner kick or a free kick or a mistake at the back. So Leicester will go into that game not confident of winning necessarily, but confident that they could get something from the game, and just definitely confident that they can keep it tight. Is it 2 weeks' time? Is it that one? I was thinking about the injuries. It's potentially like 3 weeks. Is it? Sorry, yeah. So by then we could potentially have. Sorry.
I was there. I saw a statistic the other day that Kirsten Lavelle's not conceded since their semi-final defeat in the Conti Cup, and that was
which was January, was it?
Back end of January, yeah.
Comment on screen from Vic's CM any Ellis scores. I think it'll be a different game. Don't get me wrong, she might score the winner, but I don't think it'll be. You guys mentioned the mauling. I don't think it'll be anything like that in this game at all. I think it'll be really tight. I think this will be a tighter game than some of the WSL games that we've had this season. So any type of win I think would be good. And I know that's hard, but obviously hard to say, being that we was challenging for the title at one point and they're a division lower than us. But I don't think it's any kind of walkover. I really don't.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you say, it will be interesting, and obviously, Gareth chucked out that stat there, and I think the 14 games unbeaten as well in the league. So it's one of them. They've got the confidence. We've had a wobble. It will be interesting. The only thing for me is I was just saying the other day, I hope it's streamed. It's been a little bit of a poor showing this round. Saying, we've got full match highlights on Monday, but by Monday when people are in work and everything else, etc., nobody's got the time and can't be bothered once they know the result to sit down and watch sort of 90 minutes or really, the highlights are there in the 2 or 3 minutes, but it's not great. It doesn't give an accurate picture, but fingers crossed that improves. Vic says here they'll be unpredictable because they won the championship. They'll be up for it again. You said, John, at the back, we have had a couple of catastrophes this season. But, it's one of them. It's, how we perform on the day, how we turn up, what team we play, and again, like Vic said, obviously they'll be up for it. We should be up for it, but at the end of the day, anything could happen.
What do you think their confidence is like at the moment? Obviously, you've spent a bit of time at their ground. You've overheard conversations and been a part of conversations. What do you think that their morale is like at the moment and their ambition is like?
I'll start with the ambition. The ambition is obviously very high. They got took over, as we know, in the summer by the men's team. They've got the budget for the WSL. I think they'll bring in signings, but I know absolutely nothing on that. That's not one of the conversations I'd had, sadly. But listen, they were looking. I think Jonathan came out and said that they were aiming for 5th. I think that was next season, and the Champions League within 5 years. Now, I mean, that's a bold target. Do I believe they can come 5th? I'm going to say no, and that might upset a few friends, but so be it. I think 6th, maybe 7th is realistic. I think they've got more than enough to beat Spurs. They've got more than enough to beat Bristol. Whoever stays up out of West Ham and Villa, I think they're capable, especially at home, of taking points off teams. Obviously, summer's going to be big. Do they keep the core of the squad? And then add a little bit more WSL experience like we did. But, I think, again, you mentioned morale. I think probably sky high. I saw an interview after the game with Hannah Kane, who scored the winner, and they were buzzing. They were like, let's get Lewis out the way, let's get Charlton out the way, and let's get at United. And, they were saying probably their biggest game of the season for them. And I'd agree. So it's going to be, like I say, it's going to be interesting. They'll come, like I say, with a lot of confidence. It was funny, actually, because I'll let this one out. The goalkeeper, Kirsty Lavelle, should I hope the Galton's not back? So I think that just shows that whilst they do have the confidence, they're still obviously wary of the threats that we pose. And it was interesting, because I was saying, yes, Leah's phenomenal, strong, direct, and I think it's the shot power. Obviously being a goalkeeper, I can imagine with that left foot, it'll just be an absolute arrow. And it was interesting, because it reminded me of obviously that Tobin goal against Man City. I just absolutely hammered it in the corner. But no, it should be interesting. Like I say, they're absolutely buzzing for it. Obviously, fearful of a couple of players, and rightly so. Whether Leah will be back, who knows? But again, we've got other players that are willing to step up to the plate, so it will be interesting anyway. And like I say, fingers crossed we can get the job done. And then it'll be my turn to give them a bit of stick instead of the other way around. Going to move on. I'll briefly throw in, whilst it's finished, Aston Villa did draw 0-0 with West Ham in the Women's Super League. So that wasn't not a very inspiring game, considering it was on BT. But there we go. So I'm going to obviously move on now to the controversial Super League. Now, obviously, John, we were on last night, weren't we? On YouTube, and we talked about it. We tried to keep it brief, and it ended up being half the show, but never mind. But yeah, Natalie and Ben spoke on it very well, and obviously yourself. But I want to touch on it from a women's point of view tonight. So I think what I'll do is I'll start first with the breaking news of this evening, as I'll put everything in order. So breaking news about an hour ago was Chelsea were looking to pull out. They were sort of, apparently contracts were signed last week, and they were looking to put the wheels in motion to pull out. There was massive backlash today at Stamford Bridge. There was flares, protests, banners. Obviously, we saw that at Leeds yesterday, but you name it, it's carried on. Then probably about 20 minutes later, I guess, came out Man City were also looking to do the same. Again, huge backlash. There was another thing then from Spain. Barcelona were then going to consult their fans. So you're thinking, right, okay. Then not long after that, Atletico Madrid, they said they were going to pull out as well. So it leaves the whole thing in a bit of a mess, which, I mean, for us is great because we don't want it. Obviously, there's been various players from different clubs in the men's game today speak out against it. I've seen statements from Luke Shaw. I've seen Jordan Henderson's called a meeting with the Premier League captains. Managers have spoken out against it, and it's just been an absolute shambles. And I don't say that lightly. I think that's the politest I can put it. But I want to, obviously, I'll start with you, Gareth, because obviously, John was on last night, and I want to get your thoughts. In terms of the women then, obviously, the statement released was, once the Men's European Super League is set up, the women's is going to be the same. It's going to be the same format in terms of those elite clubs. Those clubs will be keeping the money. None of it will filter further down. None of the women's clubs have been consulted on this, and neither have the players. So I'm going to let you talk, Gareth, for a little bit if you want, and just sort of give your thoughts, anything you want to ask us, and just, the overall picture, really.
Yeah, I think the thing with the women's club was, I imagine it was probably tacked on as an afterthought because that format with those teams as a women's European Super League just wouldn't have worked. If you look at the quality of those sides, right, those 12 sides, Liverpool are a championship club. Spurs are a lower end of a mid-table club. United can't qualify for the Champions League. Then you've got Arsenal, Chelsea, City, who are strong sides. Atletico Madrid, pretty average. Real Madrid have existed for 10 months. Barcelona are okay. They're in a great season, but I think this is probably an exception to the rule. And then the 3 Italian clubs playing a joke league. The league they play in is so far beneath the quality of Spain, Germany, England, France that the Inter Milan, AC Milan, Juventus don't have particularly strong women's sides. No. That league is getting stronger, but it's a level below the tier of the other 3. And maybe joke league was harsh, but it just, exactly like Vic said, it just wouldn't work without Lyon, PSG, and Wolfsburg, who I think, along with Chelsea, are the 4 best clubs in the world this season, at least, or in Europe, at least. It just wouldn't have worked. So, I think it was a complete non-starter and tacked on as an afterthought. I think the thing that, it was all about money. Like, I think fans, probably had an impact, but I also think the fact that the players were starting to talk out against it, that managers were talking out against it, that associations were coming out and saying this is deplorable, that governments were getting involved as well, that's going to have a much bigger factor. Those owners don't care about fans. They were quite open about that. And I think that's kind of the important thing to remember. Even though I made a note kind of earlier saying that even if it falls through, there's still a lot to do to restore fans' faith. And, I think what these owners are thinking is that it's going to collapse, and then sort of by October, September, when we can get back into stadiums, that'll be fine and people have forgotten about it. And that's the one thing that we can't do. Like, we can't forget that this happened. And essentially, there were 12 clubs that tried to stage a coup on football and kind of take it away from what it's always been. And so I think there still needs to be punishments. Those 12 clubs, or particularly in England, those 6, there needs to be punishments. What that punishment is, I don't know. Maybe you put a ban on them rejoining the European Clubs Association for a number of time, which means they're not eligible to play in UEFA competitions. That's one possible option. But I think unless the punishments hit the wallets of the owners, not going to be bothered. So, I see Natalie kind of replied to the tweet saying that it's not over and the Glazers have got to go. So, and I agree. I think this has to be a time, and Gary Neville put this so eloquently on TV, that you've got to get the control back. And do I think a German 50+1 rule would work in the UK? No, because I think good luck trying to convince the Glazers that they need to give up $2 billion worth of asset. It's just not going to happen. You could change the law, but that's going to be a really long process, and the Glaze, and these owners, the Henrys, the Glazers, the Kroenkes at Arsenal, would probably get involved. There's literally billions of dollars at stake for them. So I just can't see a 50+1 rule kind of ever working in the UK, at least not for a significant length of time. I think need to punish owners, not the club, which is true, but I don't know how you can separate the two. If you put a massive financial cost to the owners, well, that's going to penalise the club. If you fine the owners $350 million just to pick a number out of the air, well, then that's money they're not going to put into the club. So whatever you do, it's going to affect it. And the one way to do it is going to be affecting the money. And we know from football that Champions League, that's where the money is. And so, I don't know, would I take not playing in the Champions League for 3 years to try and convince the Glazers to cash out and do one? Yeah, probably. we've not been consistently in the Champions League for a long time. So, what's 3 years? I'm 26, I'll be 29. Yeah, cool. Got another, hopefully, 50 plus years without them. So, hopefully, something's got to happen. This can't just be the end and, okay, fine, cool, come back. Let's all have a hug and it be done. There has to be punishments. What they are, I don't know. But if the FA want to pay me a shed load of money to advise them, I'm more than happy to.
It's interesting, actually, because that point now by Vix has got me thinking. Obviously, like you say, punish the owners, not the club. And obviously, it, like you talked about, it depends what happens, because potentially if anything did happen, it's still going to affect the club. Like you say, if we ban us from Champions League, it's the players and the manager that suffers. Like you say, if you put a 350 million fine on, that's not coming out of their back pockets. It's either ladled on as debt or it's coming out the club. So it's difficult. It's a fine balance. I'm going to ask this then to you, John, sort of based around that question. We know when new owners come into football clubs, they have to pass a fit and proper person's test, and there's numerous things that they go through and finances looked into. Do you think it may be potentially possible for the FA or UEFA or FIFA or whoever to look into this and say, well, actually, you now have gone against the sort of terms and conditions and these test regulations, and we could, it would be a minefield legally, snatch the club off them or somehow force them to sell up based on that. Do you see that? Like I said, I don't know the ins and outs, and I'm sure it would be a minefield, but do you think that could be a route in terms of punishments and it not kind of affecting players and management and things on the field that obviously are really not too much to do with anything off the field?
I love the idea, but I think when you own a business, it's very hard to,
difficult.
like I say, it's so hard, because that's what it is at the end of the day. To those guys, it is a business, and I'm sure I understand if they got against the terms and conditions of the contract, I completely get that. But when they actually own the club, I think that'll be very, very tough. But just to go back to what you was asking Gareth regarding the women's side of things, I do thoroughly agree with Gareth's thought process. I thought the same. How on earth could those same clubs, be selected for like the women's Super League? It just wouldn't make any sense. So originally, I thought to myself, well, maybe it wouldn't happen right away. Maybe it would happen like down the line, and it would kind of force Liverpool to maybe put an extra bit of money into their women's teams and maybe set it up in 3 or 4 years down the line. I couldn't for the life of me think that it was going to happen right away. But maybe plans to, or even plans to have more than one league. So that for me was the only way that I could kind of see sense, especially with like the German teams not doing it as well. And I don't know if I was speaking to you about this, Matt, or speaking to somebody last night about it on voice notes. So it could have been you, it could have been somebody else. But the voice notes was popping off last night. But it just didn't make sense with the lack of top quality women's teams that wouldn't be in it. So for me, I was a little bit worried that it could happen, and it still could. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think it would happen right away. But yeah, look, it's massive, and obviously all the breaking news now. It looks really embarrassing for these owners, and I think it's good. I applaud the people for backing out, but it is still very embarrassing for them. What's more embarrassing, actually agreeing to it in the first place, or not sticking to what you thought was right in the first place. I'd obviously much rather Manchester United back down now, and I'm sure they will at some point. But as Gareth said at the start of the show, the longer everybody, the longer it goes on, the more that they don't really need to back down. They could just be like turn around and say, well, the league's not there anymore, so we're kind of forced to not do it. But yeah, so much going on. There's talks about March at 3:00 at Old Trafford on Saturday. So much, and even though Woodward's gone, I still think it's the Glazers that need to go. I don't think this was Woodward. This for me is the old. Go on,
Can I jump in there quickly? I've just seen a tweet from Mike Keegan for half an hour ago, so just after we went live, just before we went live actually, on the news of Woodward resigning, his tweet literally says, "Incredible, was told the collapse may well see the Glazers cash out, and this points in that direction." So there is already, Daily Mail are usually okay when it comes to sport. So we'll see. I think rumours are going to kind of be all over the place, aren't they? If they do cash out, which is kind of what Victor said there. Who do you think could buy us? Well, if we're worth $4.2 billion, which
Won't
is
be
what
short of
the
offers,
is,
will they?
but it's going to be either someone equally as shady, because they're not stupid. Stupid people don't become billionaires. Shady people do. So it's either going to be someone kind of equally as bad in terms of their business practices, or it's going to be another state, and it's going to be someone either from Saudi Arabia or China or another kind of mega rich country that's looking to buy in. Yeah, a consortium could be the option as well. But yeah, it's certainly going to be an interesting period of time.
Do you know what? It like you say, it is interesting, because I think for me it comes at a time where, I saw something yesterday, and it was something that Natalie Cook tweeted from Sky Sports, and they didn't give the name, but one of the owners, I believe it was a UK club, basically came out on Sky Sports yesterday and said, listen, it was about the money. It was about improving the balance sheets. It was about making profits, and football as a business. And it was an absolute disgraceful comment, and sort of things that were just got out of hand. But it's interesting, because now this is all backfiring. This could potentially, if they are forced to sell up or do sell up, work in their favour. Because, I think you mentioned there, 4.2 billion, obviously they didn't pay that for the club. They've taken an absolute wedge in terms of money out of the club. This could actually now work in their favour, where they say, right, well, it was all on Ed. Ed's gone, and we now walk away with a tidy profit. I mean, listen, here's to hoping. But I'd obviously heard when this first broke that this was sort of a rebellion into Champions League, that they wanted an expanded and an improved Champions League with better money. And this was sort of, forthcoming because that hadn't happened or hadn't yet happened. So it's going to be interesting now, certainly these next few months. Like I say there, Gareth, in terms of the Glazers.
Oh, we've lost him again.
Absolutely, massively.
I'm going to carry on talking, and hopefully he'll realise that he's cutting out. But he's smiling. I think he's seeing it. Just give us 2 seconds, Matt. I'll keep talking while you're sorting out your stuff. First of all, shout out to Dale, one of my mates in the comments there, talking about Conor McGregor. I mean, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? If like a celebrity person kind of jumped in and bought us out. Obviously, there was talks about like a prince in, I think, Arabia or something like a year ago, but 4.2 billion is a massive amount of money, and how much money must you actually have in the bank to want to spend 4 billion? I mean, if it was me, I'd want at least 12, 15 billion in the bank to want to spend 4 billion, if that kind of makes sense. But that's just me. But also, does it make you think that they'll take a bit more of a discount now, and they wouldn't be happy? Maybe they'd be happy with a bit less than 4.2 billion. So, you got any thoughts on that one, Gaz?
I think. Listen, I mean, the Glazers don't care what United fans think. They've been at that club for 16 years now, and we've never been happy with them. There's been protests every single year. I genuinely don't think Joel Glazer cares what United fans think. I think the only thing he cares about is his bottom line. So I think it depends. Don't think he'll back down and take a cheaper price immediately. I think the question is, like Vic said, who can afford it? I think a consortium maybe, but that's going to have to be either a very large consortium or a consortium of very rich people who are all going to have conflicting interests, and then trying to work together is going to be difficult. So yeah, I think the club is now at a point where it's worth so much money that selling it becomes really difficult, unless it's to kind of a state-owned family or company, which has its own strengths and weaknesses. You look at City, you look at PSG. There's arguments there over what they're doing with football. Are we kind of cutting off our nose to spite our face in a sense? Yeah, I think it's going to be one of them where until owners don't have as much power as they do currently, there's no good solution here. There's a better one. I think the Glazers going is better, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be anything good.
Ideally, what you want. So I was going to say, ideally, what you want is a rich owner like Abramovich who actually wants to win as well. So not just put money in and take it out, put money in and actually wants to take us back to the top again. That would be the ideal scenario, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I was just going to say, John, I'm back now. I don't know what happened, so I'm back to jump in. But what I was going to say was it's interesting because I'm going to link it sort of back to the women's game again. You know, they're on about doing this, like I say, ridiculous proposal, what's now on the verge of crumbling. You know, we've talked for years about the lack of investment in the women's game. And, you know, we highlighted earlier, didn't we, about the clubs. And, you know, there was examples with Lyon and Wolfsburg where the men's teams aren't the best and they are in the women's game, which makes it interesting. And it's bizarre because there's so much that can be done in the women's game to make it better. And here they are trying to create a women's Super League when it's like, well, hang on a sec. You've not made the championship fully pro. You've not even boosted the numbers in the championship. WSL could get so many more teams in it. And there's so much to come in terms of if you're chucking money and looking to be greedy and getting money, isn't there, really, before we start faffing about with these elite leagues. That it's just, I mean, you only have to look at Birmingham City this year. The problems they've had has been, I mean, ridiculous, absolutely crazy. But, I mean, like I was sort of touching on before I was breaking up, you know, it's good to see fans, players and managers come together and unite and call this out. And I think it just shows the backlash and the power that fans can have as one collectively, everybody getting together. But it's interesting for me, you know, because there's been so many things this year that have been wrong and not dealt with by the FA and by other things. But yet, as soon as the Super League's created, they're on to sort of condemn it within hours and minutes. But yet, you know, we talk about, we've had racism this year and we talk about that, you know, abuse of players, like I say, lack of support for Birmingham, and nobody does anything. But yet, as soon as money and greed and finance comes into it, everybody's all over it to try and get their 10p's worth and try and make some money off it. So I think, you know, if anything from this, I'd like to think, obviously, I mean, like I say, it's an absolute shambles. I'd like to think we can learn from it. And obviously, you know, Gareth mentioned before, we can't forget this happened. There should be punishments, totally agree. But again, there's lessons to be learned for me. You know, I mean, like I say, I said yesterday, actually, didn't I, John, on your show, that I didn't think the women's one would take off purely due to the fact of where the game is now, and there's not even enough money in it, and there's not enough clubs that would be able to join it anyway. For me, doesn't look like it's happening in the men. I mean, listen, it could still, I doubt it now. We're talking 8 to 10 teams. Would it be worth it? Maybe, maybe not. But it's one of those things, like I say, you just hope now that maybe we can move on. Maybe it makes people realise, well, actually, let's invest in the women's game. Let's sort out the grassroots. Let's sort out the equal opportunities. And these are all topics we've talked about, aren't they, on previous shows, you know, improving it, keep it sustainable, grow the game. And just like I said before, there's so many things to come before a Super League that nobody wants anyway. I'm going to move on, also talking about sort of investment and going the right way, because there was some good news to come out of today, something that we've been crying out for. And like I say, we've done a show on it. PGMOL today announced, or was it last night maybe even, that they will train and develop women's referees. They've agreed a 3-year investment program to help provide specialist support to improve the quality of referees. And they're saying it will be a small step towards helping these referees become full-time. I'll quickly read a statement from Mike Riley, who's head of that Referees Association, and I'll get your thoughts. So he said, the women's game is now more popular. Match officials should be given the same opportunities and support that is available to officials in the men's game. The idea is to support the growth and development of our referees and lead to an overall quality of match officiating, especially given the deal that kicks in next season with Sky. So I'll start with you, Gareth. Obviously, I know you've been as vocal as me, and we've all sort of been crying out. But you know, your thoughts on this, and then obviously where do you think this will take the game in terms of improving it and raising the profile?
Yeah, I think every single week you watch a game and there's always something about the referee that you can talk about. So something needs to be done. And, you know, it isn't necessarily the referee's fault. I'm an official myself in cricket, and I know that in the early days of me officiating cricket, that I made some shocking decisions. But it's about the support that's put in place. I'm not officiating in the professional game, but there was still support in place and a pathway that I could go down. I think one thing that is important to realize is that we shouldn't get carried away. Like, this is an investment. It's not a case of next season, that's it. Yeah. It's full-time referees. It's all going to be great. It's still going to take time, but it's absolutely a step in the right direction that we've been crying out for and we've absolutely needed. Hopefully now there'll be a higher standard of officiating. Referees are still going to make mistakes, of course. They make mistakes at every single level in every single sport, but it's about that pathway for them to follow, to develop, to become better referees. I think it's about making the referees we have better, rather than kind of just grabbing referees from the men's championship and parachuting them in. But yeah, absolutely a step in the right direction, and a 3-year investment is absolutely what's needed.
Yeah, for me, I think for that statement that was made, I think if that was like a genuine kind of statement that he believes in, then I think that was a very honest, right thing to say. I do really.
Yeah, John.
Can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. I think it was a very good statement. It took me by surprise a little bit, because it was only a couple of months ago where we heard that there was going to be no investment in refereeing. So for all of a sudden this to come out, did surprise me. We had, as soon as Sky was announced, we all started saying, right, this is going to put pressure on better referees, and maybe they've listened to that and they've realised that and they've done something about it, which is good. As Gareth says, it's not going to happen overnight. You're not just going to suddenly click your fingers and suddenly get better referees. I get that as well, but it looks like it's in the forefront of their mind now, and they're going to do something about it. Vicky was right about the fact that it could potentially be an embarrassment if it's on TV 4 times a week, and we've seen all these stupid refereeing decisions, and then potentially sponsors won't want to get involved, and this, that, and the other. So, I do think it's something that we need to look at. My first thought process was more along the lines of stadiums need to get better to make sure that the games actually go ahead first, and then the second thing would be refereeing. But the fact that referees are actually we're going to be doing something with that now, I think is really positive. So let's see what comes of it, and hopefully it's not just talk, and it's actually we actually see some plans in place.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting because it comes at a time when obviously we are getting more visibility. And I know Victor said there, people are becoming disillusioned with men's football, and it's a perfect opportunity for the women's. And I completely agree. Perfect example of what's gone on over the past few days. Obviously, like we sort of touched on tonight, they are looking for the women's game. And personally, like I said yesterday, I still don't think that'll take off. So it could be that, if it did go ahead with those 10 teams or whatever in the men's team, that we may see them become disillusioned and come over to the women's game, which would be absolutely great. But I think it comes at a time where it's needed. We've all sort of been vocal and we've talked about, these people are not full-time. They get £50 match fee plus expenses for travelling. Speaking from a coaching point of view, I'm not a referee. I've been a referee. I say being a referee, reluctantly being a referee, thrown in to cover when nobody's turned up. But I know as a coach, you do, when you undertake these sort of programs, you do get a mentor, you get mentorship, and you have targets and you set goals and things to reach. At present, there's none of that for these referees. So I think what we should see like Gareth said, it won't happen overnight. It's a process. They've got a 3-year thing set up. I think it's going to take at least 12 months, at least, before we see some change. But I think if they can put this in place, they can work with these referees. Listen, we can train new referees up. There's plenty of, I'm still involved at like a semi-pro and a grassroots level, and there's plenty of referees out there. There's not a shortage. So there's still people coming through that want to referee. And, what a great opportunity to maybe start by, getting on this program, get full time and work in the women's game. Fixes here will help the morale. I think it's one of them. You know, fans have high expectations. Managers do. Players do. And even if we've won games, there seems to be talking points. You know, it's not a case of, oh, we've lost, let's blame the ref or whatever. It's the fact that it just spoils the game in general. And even if we've won, there can be something ridiculous that we talk about. So, I mean, I can only see this, like you two, you know, as a positive. I think it's about time. You know, we've called out so many times. So have managers, so have players. And it's got to the stage now where we're finally seeing, oh, well, I know, let's invest because we've got the opportunity with Sky. I know, I think people have said in the past, haven't they, John? It was like, you know, games are going to be visible. Oh, but we're going to have absolutely shocking referees. What do we do? And do we think it will help? And obviously it has helped because now we've had this statement kind of dropped out there. And it's good to see. Go on, John, if you jumping in.
Yeah. No, I was thinking of it another angle as well. Are they just doing this to kind of cover their back? So they know that they're going to get ridiculed by bad refereeing over this next season because everyone's going to see it and everyone's going to talk about it. Are they just doing this now to kind of say, yeah, we're aware that the refereeing's not the best in the women's game, but this is what we've got in place? Or at least they're, you know, by saying what they've said today or last night, whenever it was announced, at least now they can turn around and say, well, yeah, we're aware of it. This is what we're going to do. Whereas if they hadn't said anything, it's almost like they're not aware of it, so to speak. So at least by doing this, it's kind of saved them a year or two as well, saying, yeah, you know, we're looking into it. This is what we're doing. Just give us a bit of time, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, like you say, I mean, it was only, maybe 3 weeks ago, they came out and said, oh, you know, we're happy with it so far, and referees under pressure. I think it was Kelly Simmons, you know, she kind of played it down and said, oh, well, we're not actually looking to, you know, make these referees full-time or not willing to train them, which was bizarre because now, I mean, she looks like a little bit of an idiot, doesn't she? It's kind of backtracked and they've switched it up. And again, I do believe, you know, that it could be due to the Sky deal. I really do. Obviously there, you know, sort of pretty much what I was talking there about bringing that forward. And I think, listen, I've always said, and I don't like saying it, but I've always said one day we're going to end up with like a serious injury or it costing, you know, a trophy or Champions League place or a relegation spot due to poor errors. And, you know, like I say, I get refereeing's difficult, but some of these are so basic, it's absolutely unreal. I think what I would like to see, I'm hoping this, when they say referee includes the whole team, so it includes, you know, the lines, what we call lineswomen, linesmen,
assistant referees,
spare official. Yeah, assistant referees, that's the word I was looking for. Not spared officials. But yeah, I think collectively, you know, if we can, you know, improve this, that's a small step. And obviously, you know, it really will help, like I say, just having somebody there to guide you through it, you know. And obviously there are referees, assessors, what turn up to games. There was one there on Sunday at Leicester. That referee did have a nightmare as well, countless times. But, you know, it's one of them. I suppose we've got to start somewhere. Vic says here, Sky not always the good guys, but deliver quality football, and it's much needed. Yeah. Agree. You know, I'll briefly touch on that. Is that, you know, like she says, Sky football and Sky Sports is fantastic. You know, there's so much, like we talked about pre-match, didn't we, in post-match shows not long ago, and sort of getting the visibility out there and presenters. And I know, Gareth, you talked about the research team when we slated the commentary. But it's slowly looking like now that things are, dare I say, looking up, which is very good in terms of the women's game in general. You know, we're getting the TV deal. We're slowly getting there with refs. I mean, listen, like I said earlier, you know, there's so many things that can be done. But it's one of them, a little bit like Casey talked about, isn't it, with a sort of a crawl, walk, jog, run mantra, where it's got to be a process. And, you know, we can't be wasting money and we can't be getting into more debt because obviously these clubs run at a loss, but I think it is massively important. Just before we finish then, I'm going to obviously, got another comment there, talking about FA Cup coverage. Yeah, 6 minutes before. 6 minutes before a game kicks off.
Yeah. I think it's 4 minutes on the weekend just gone.
Was it?
I think it was 13:56. Yeah.
Shocking. But I think, like we say, you know, if we can get the build-up and we can get sort of things involved, then, you know, we will start. So I'm going to, obviously, cautious of time, I'm going to look forward to wrapping up shortly. But I'm just going to come to you both with a big game on Sunday. We're on BBC, Tottenham. I'm going to come and get a score prediction from you both. If you want to chuck in goal scorers as well, do that. And then, John, I'm going to let you speak on sort of plans for next week. Big anniversary, things happening. So I'll come to you first, Gareth. Tottenham, live on BBC, 12:30. Thoughts on that sort of score prediction or goal scorers?
I think both teams are going to come in off a win. I think it's going to be a tougher game than we probably would usually expect Spurs to be. But yeah, I think we'll come away with the win. I think 2-1 probably. There are frailties in our defence, but I think our attack is going to be too good for them. I think it's just going to be a case that we'll score more than they will. And yeah, 2-1.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, I'm going to go for 3-1. Yeah, pretty much like what Gareth said. You could always see us conceding at the moment, and I think Tottenham, coming off the back of their recent results, I think they should be fairly confident as well. 3-0. I don't know. I'm always reluctant to say a nil at the moment.
Yeah.
Look, I think that 6-0 win, albeit against a weaker team, did do us some good. I think the morale probably, because of what's happened the last couple of days around United in general, has probably pushed us down again. So that momentum that we had might have. It depends. I mean, they might be in a bit of a bubble, and they might not know. They might not be reading everything. But with it being the women's team, they probably are alerted to what fans are thinking, aren't they? Let's be honest. So I think that momentum that we had with Burnley, I think that might have gone now. I don't think it'll be an easy game, but I do think that we'll win. I think Hansen will play again. I think Kristen Press will probably play in this game. I'd like to see her play and end the season on a high. Yeah, so if you talk about goal scorers, I'll probably throw Kristen in there with a couple. I think she's due a game where she really does shine. So yeah, let's hope that she gets on the score sheet. Yeah.
Do you know what was interesting? Because I'm also thinking a clean sheet as well, but like Vix, I'm not going to say 3. I was going to say 2-0. It's one of them, isn't it? Like you said, the defense has been vulnerable, but at the same time, I'm looking at Tottenham and thinking, who's actually going to score? At least with Reading, I knew that Dan Carter was a half decent player, obviously prior to her injuries. And obviously other clubs obviously lost to Arsenal and City were decent clubs. But it's one of them really. Like you said, John, we are susceptible at the back. Somebody may pop up. You just never know. But I think for me, I'm thinking a 2-0 win. I think. You mentioned momentum. It'll give in a little bit of confidence, won't it? Especially to those younger players, which we spoke about on them yesterday. But I think for me, 2-0. I'm going to go. Ooh. Does anyone know if LJ is around? Fit, unfit?
Apparently, she was in the stands without the boot on, wasn't she? But
yeah, I saw her in the stands with no boot. But who knows? Right, in that case, I'm going to have to go. Go on.
No, I guess I'll be very surprised if she does play because.
Say again, John.
I would say I would be surprised if she did feature because Casey, in the last interview that she did, she mentioned Russo and Galton being fit for the end of the season, but she never even mentioned LJ.
Yeah.
So that's one of two things. It's one of two things. One, it was only a small injury and it wasn't even worth mentioning, or there's no sign of her coming back just yet. So I don't know. I'm a bit skeptical about that one.
In that case, then I'm going to have to go Press and I'll back Tooney for another. Why not? Since half the team's injured and that's my excuse for not remembering who's actually fit. That's a little bit poor from me, but never mind. Quick one on there just before we wrap from Vix. Do you think Leslie will be back? I'd say no for me. I'd give her, obviously I'm assuming they've trained most of this week. I'd give her next week as well, being the fact that Monday was her first day back in full training. I think a couple of weeks for her, get her up to scratch, possibly Bristol away. Assuming the pitch isn't an absolute state, might be a decent place to throw her in. Then obviously we've got Everton in the FA Cup, but I think for me now it's about just not rushing them, especially for league games now when the Champions League's pretty much gone. I think get fit for the FA Cup if need be. Something that we need to progress in, and we've talked about on previous shows. Just before we go then, obviously, John, you are back Thursday. You are on at 7:00 with Natalie and guests, and you're sort of talking about 5 topics from the season, so 5 talking points of the season as a whole. Saturday's myself and Ben, 8 o'clock. Sunday, we have got pre-match build-up for the Tottenham game, and we've got half-time analysis. And then, John, I'm going to let you finish off with the other news.
Yeah, so we've done 48 shows now since September. Started off with just one show a week with me and Nat. We had no idea how it was going to go. I got asked to host a show on a Man United channel, which I jumped at. Immediately asked Natalie if she fancied joining me, and it went from there. Obviously, we had quite a few views, and Matt, you joined us with Ben on one of the shows, and it was a good show. We had a fair bit of chemistry there, and you kept in touch, wanted to come on more shows, and you did. And I think that was the point where we wanted to have 2 shows a week, and we've done that. And it's nice to know that there's other people that wanted to get involved, and Gareth obviously popped on, and a few others have popped on as well. Gareth's more regular now than most, and it's great to see that this is exactly what All for United is. It's about a variety of fans, not just one fan. And we're now building it out into a women's section. So we've got our women's YouTube channel, which will be launched next week. We just got to put the finishing touches on that, but the account's all set up. We just want to do something a little bit extra before we actually launch it. And the one on Thursday, the show on Thursday coming is with Sophie from Hair Dry Treatment. She's been on the show before. If you watch your YouTube and if you're a Man United fan, you'll know who Sophie is. Got a very similar accent to myself. Big up the Black Country. And that'll be our 49th show. But then our 50th show, we're going to do something very special that we've never done on All for United before, or All for United WFC before at least. So please look forward to that one, because I'm looking forward to it, definitely. And with all the negative news around Man United at the moment, I don't want this 50th show that we should be proud of and that we're excited for it to be tainted. So please look out for that. And you'll see that come on the YouTube channel soon. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So, plenty of things to look forward to regarding what we're doing, at least. And thank you, Vicky. That's a nice comment. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, like you said there, you mentioned the YouTube. You mentioned the YouTube there. It'd be great to see, obviously, everybody get across. We will, obviously, when there's sort of breaking news, we will stick with a little bit of Twitter Live as well. So we will try and mix it up. And like you said, John, as well, it's not just about, keeping it all Man United. There are little bits where we're going to be branching out as well to try and involve sort of other fans and other clubs. I know more so my sort of Tuesday shows to bring coverage, to everybody, because I think that's important for growing the women's game. We've all sort of agreed, that there'll be a nice blend throughout, the channel, and obviously we will be pushing more shows as well. Lots of plans, haven't we, lined up? Lots of topics, lots of guests, and like you said, obviously a big 50th show due to coming up. We'll not obviously drop what's happening, but like I say, just keep a lookout. Obviously, when that YouTube channel does go live, we will be promoting that through our own personal social channels and also on All for United. So again, and Vix has said it there. She enjoys the shows. We enjoy putting on these shows. We enjoy creating content. We love seeing familiar faces that have backed us since the very, very start. It's fantastic. We get so many great comments from people, and it's really nice that everyone sort of, shares the same interest and the same passion as ourselves, really. I'm going to wrap it up then. So massive thank you to John, as always, and to Gareth, as well as always, for joining me on this lovely Tuesday evening. Like I said earlier, we are back Thursday. John's back at 7 p.m, so keep a lookout for that. I will update the schedule. That'll go out tomorrow morning. Again, we'll pin it just so people have got a visual. Thanks as well to everybody in the comments, for everybody watching live, and we will see you very soon. Cheers, guys.